At the National Philharmonic Hall in Warsaw this weekend, audiences have retreated to a protest by two female climate activists. They are trying to save the world by interrupting a concert. This is a warning. Our world is on fire. We are the last generation that can stop the climate catastrophe. We apologize for the disruption, but this show can no longer go on. Stop the climate. Activists are bothered by artists and politicians in the European Union, by farmers. Both argue that crops and farms, especially those on the old continent, are a deadly threat to the entire planet. We must bear in mind that any agriculture must adapt to changing climate conditions. I am ready to talk to farmers, encouraging the use of these ecosystems, eco-schemes, and change the way we farm. The solution is to be the Green Deal, which is to radically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We will defend the Green Deal. On the other hand, we will. I'm talking about Poland 2050. On the other hand, we will defend it if it is introduced in such a way that it gives itself a chance. The well-being of farmers can mean exactly also supporting the Green Deal policy, because most of the soils in the European Union are being destroyed by the very intensive economy. I would like to emphasize that the Green Deal is about caring for our planet, and we won't get away from it if we keep claiming it as an ideology. The problem is that the Green Deal is also a radical reduction in food production and thus most likely massive bankruptcies of farmers across Europe. The Green Deal is not that green because the carbon emissions that European agricultural emits reach 1% globally. This is primarily a blow aimed at our production. These concerns are confirmed by a report by Policy Insight, whose authors examined the impact of the Green Deal on agriculture. Policy Insight report, Impact of the European Green Deal on Polish Agriculture. Implementation of the European Green Deal will reduce food security in Poland, prices will rise, and availability of foodstuffs will decrease. Hence the farmers' protests in Poland, Germany, in Spain, and in Brussels. And availability of food. An almost unimaginable looping of the minds of ideologues who have caught on to power and who think they will save the planet by what in reality will be an abolishing of agriculture. However, ecological restrictions are a sacrifice that left liberal politicians are willing to make, as long as they are not the ones who have to bear the cost of their ideology. This is an excerpt from a conversation with Deputy Climate and Environment Minister Ursula Zielińska, who is calling for a 90% reduction in CO2 emissions. Why do you not drive an electric car, but a second-generation Volkswagen? Because I live in a block of flats and don't have a charger under my block. Simple. The restrictions resulting from the Green Deal, however, are consistently disagreed with by law and justice politicians. This is simply a disaster and it has to be stopped. We opposed it. While with us in the Union, the majority that is in power today fought against it. We were there saying that it had to be done and they criticised us, that we were backward, that we were anti-European, talked about Polexit and so on. The farmers are also demanding that the border with Ukraine be sealed. After the war broke out, Brussels allowed the import of food there that did not meet any ecological standards, and there was therefore much cheaper and of inferior quality. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk met Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė and President Gitanas Nausėda in Vilnius today to discuss bilateral cooperation, security matters and support for Ukraine. The agenda included bolstering sanctions against Russia and Belarus, NATO summit preparations, and bilateral issues such as energy and transportation cooperation. Tusk's visit also coincides with the farmers' protest at the Polish-Lithuanian border in Budzisko, raising concerns about potential roadblocks. Poland, seeking to meet the needs of protesting farmers, plans to ask the European Union to put sanctions on Russian and Belarusian agricultural products. Like much of Europe, Poland has been gripped by protests in recent weeks as farmers demonstrate against EU environmental regulations and what they say is unfair competition from Ukraine since the bloc waived duties on imports in 2022. Tusk suggested that market disruptions were also being caused by agricultural products from Russia and Belarus and did not rule out introducing an all-out ban as a solution to the problem. This would allow Ukraine to continue to earn from its grain. During a joint conference with Lithuanian Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė, Tusk said that joint European Union decisions would be more effective than measures introduced by individual countries. Šimonytė said Vilnius would support the initiative.
Dzisiaj zwrócę się do marszałka Sejmu w Warszawie po powrocie z Wilna z propozycją uchwały polskiego Sejmu.
Today I will turn to the Speaker of the Parliament with a proposal for a resolution calling on the European Commission to impose full sanctions on food products from Russia and Belarus. I am convinced that the common European decision will be incomparably more effective than the individual decisions of the countries in the region. I understand them, but I would like to make a decision about sanctions on Russia and Belarus regarding food and agricultural products as the whole European Union.
Żebyśmy wspólnie jako cała Unia Europejska podjęli decyzję o sankcjach na Rosję i Białoruś dotyczące produktów żywnościowych i rolnych.
Tusk also criticized Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who were photographed laughing during a meeting in Turkey on Friday, the same day as a funeral of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. This morning, NATO member Albania, which has no fighter jets of its own, opened a rebuilt Soviet-era airbase to serve NATO aircraft amid an increased threat from Russia, Prime Minister Edi Rama said. NATO has spent over €50 million on the Kosovo airbase to bolster its presence in the region. Airspace in the Adriatic country of Albania, which borders Greece to the south and Montenegro to the north, is protected by Italy and Greece. 2 fighter jets flying from NATO's Aviano airbase in Italy landed in Kosovo to mark the reopening of the airfield. The airbase is located in the small town of Kosovo, once known as Stalin City, when Soviet and Chinese-made MiGs were on standby for orders to scramble in case of a war with the West that never arrived. The likely targets then were Austria, Germany, Italy and Denmark, Rama said. If you read the declassified war plan that was in the Kremlin drawers, the war would start with the bombing of Vienna, Stuttgart, Munich, Nuremberg, 2 NATO bases in Denmark, 3 Italian bases in Padua, Verona and Vicenza, and parts of this operation would also be the combat planes from the Kosovo base. Today we live in a different era, and fortunately, Albania is on the other side. Albania, which joined NATO in 2009, is also in talks with NATO to build a naval base at Porto Romano on the Adriatic coast. We go now to the continuing intrigue coming out of Moscow and Berlin. On Friday night, Russian media published a 38-minute recording of a call in which German officers were heard discussing weapons for Ukraine and a potential strike by Kiev on a bridge in Crimea, prompting Russian officials to demand an explanation. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov accused Germany and the West of planning to attack Russian territory and questioned whether Chancellor Olaf Scholz was in control of his country's military leaders. Here we have to find out whether the Bundeswehr is doing this on its own initiative. Then the question is, how controllable is the Bundeswehr? And how much does Scholz control the situation? Or is it part of the government policy of Germany? Both scenarios are very bad. Both once again emphasize the direct involvement of countries of the collective West in the conflict around Ukraine. Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius said on Sunday that Russia was conducting an information war aimed at creating divisions within Germany in his first reaction to the publication in Russia of an audio recording of a meeting of senior German military officials.
Der Vorfall ist deutlich mehr als nur das Abhören und Veröffentlichen.
The incident is clearly more than just the interception and publication of a conversation within the Air Force. It is part of an information war that Putin is waging. There is no doubt about that. It is a hybrid attack aimed at disinformation. It's about division, it's about undermining our unity. And accordingly, we should react to it with particular prudence, but no less determinedly.
Reagieren, aber nicht weniger entschlossen.
On Saturday, Germany called it an apparent act of eavesdropping and said it was investigating. Pistorius said it was too early to think of consequences and called for prudence in allocating blame. Participants in the call discussed the possibility of delivery of Taurus cruise missiles to Kiev, which Chancellor Olaf Scholz has publicly so far firmly rejected. They also talk about the training of Ukrainian soldiers and possible military targets. The leak occurred via the WebEx platform, not a secure internal army network. Dmitry Medvedev, former Russian president and current deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, suggested the recording indicated Berlin's readiness to confront Moscow. Pistorius said the officers were doing what they were supposed to be doing, in assessing various scenarios, but said at no point in the tape had a line been crossed about NATO or Germany becoming involved in the war. The defense ministry said it would release its findings soon, and that both the call and the military security protocols will be thoroughly investigated. Earlier today, the German ambassador to Russia, Alexander Graf Lambsdorff, was seen arriving at the Russian Foreign Ministry. Many assume he was summoned there for this very reason, although German media quoted a DPA agency report claiming that the ambassador's visit had been planned in advance. Journalists attempted to get some comments from the ambassador on his departure from the ministry, but he left without saying a word. Germany is among the NATO countries that have supplied weaponry to Ukraine, including tanks. Russia accuses what it calls the collective West of using Ukraine to wage a proxy war against it. NATO says it is helping Kiev to defend itself against a war of aggression.
3, 2, 1.
And we end now with a positive story. Another SpaceX rocket successfully launched from Florida, carrying 3 US astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut bound for the International Space Station for a 6-month science mission. The Falcon 9 rocket, topped with the Crew Dragon capsule named Endeavour, took off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral. The crew members, including rookie astronaut Matthew Dominic and NASA veteran Dr. Michael Barrett, expressed excitement about the journey. The mission, designated Crew 8, marks the 8th long-duration ISS team flown by NASA aboard the SpaceX launch vehicle. Despite tensions between the United States and Russia because of the conflict in Ukraine, Russian cosmonaut Alexander Grabenkin participated under a ride-sharing deal. Crew 8 is set to conduct approximately 250 experiments during their stay on the ISS, which will last until the end of August. The ISS, a symbol of international collaboration, has been continuously operated for 25 years, serving as a platform for scientific research and fostering international relations following the end of the Cold War rivalries. NASA plans to keep the space station operational for at least 6 more years.